The screams pierced the air, cutting through the downpour like a blade. Burn them! Burn them both! Don't let them get away! The villagers chanted, their voices a terrifying symphony of rage and judgment. Ugomma's royal attire clung to her rain-soaked body as she ran through the muddy paths, her heavy beaded crown slipping precariously from her head. Her breath came in sharp gasps, her chest burning with exertion and fear. Behind her, Uju followed, her maid's attire drenched, the edges of her wrapper dragging through the mud as she struggled to keep pace. Faster, Uju, Ugoma yelled over her shoulder, her voice breaking with desperation. The rain hammered down on them, obscuring their vision as thunder rumbled ominously in the distance. I'm trying, my queen, Uju cried, her voice trembling as she glanced back at the growing mob chasing them with torches raised high. The flames danced wildly, defying the rain, fueled by the villagers' fury. Ugoma's feet slipped on the wet ground and she stumbled, her knees slamming into the mud. Uju was at her side in an instant, gripping her arm tightly. Get up, Your Highness, she urged, her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. We have to keep moving. Tears mixed with the rain streaming down Ugoma's face as she allowed Uju to pull her up. Why won't they just leave us alone? She sobbed, her voice barely audible over the storm. Because they don't understand, Uju replied, her voice raw with emotion. And what they don't understand, they fear. The mob grew closer, their torches casting eerie shadows through the rain. Ugoma and Uju's hand clasped tightly together as they ran deeper into the forest, the chants fading into the storm. The scene shifted abruptly, dissolving into the soft glow of lamplight. Ugomma sat before a polished bronze mirror, her reflection a vision of regal beauty. Her crimson and gold royal wrappers were perfectly arranged, the intricate patterns gleaming under the flickering oil lamps. Beaded ornaments adorned her hair, cascading down like a crown of jewels, yet her hands trembled in her lap, betraying her nerves. Behind her, Uju moved with quiet precision, her touch gentle as she smoothed Ugoma's hair with fragrant oils. The earthy scent wafted through the air, grounding Ugoma in the moment. You often smell like the earth after rain, Ugoma murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. And you are using it on me for my special night with the king. Uju's lips curved into a soft smile. My mother prepares the oils, she said. She says they bring peace to restless spirits. Ugomma tilted her head slightly, studying Uju's reflection in the mirror. Her maid's movements were fluid, almost reverent, as she arranged the queen's hair with practiced care. Have you have you done this before? Ugoma asked hesitantly. Uju froze briefly, then resumed her walk, her expression unreadable. Your Highness, she said lightly, a young queen shouldn't ask such things of a common maid like me. Ugoma flushed, her fingers twisting in her lap. I'm just nervous, she admitted, her voice faltering. What if, what if he doesn't even make a move? Uju chuckled softly, her laugh a soothing balm to Ugoma's frayed nerves. Have you ever seen where they kept yam and goat together and the goat didn't eat the yam? A surprised laugh bubbled out of Ugomma, easing some of the tension in her chest. So I'm the yam now, she asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. The finest yam in the barn, Uju replied, her tone playful but warm. The laughter faded, replaced by a charged silence. Ugomma's gaze lingered on Uju's reflection, her maid's serene focus contrasting with the storm of emotions building inside her. Slowly, she reached out, her fingers brushing lightly against Uju's arm. Show me, Ugomma said softly, her voice trembling. Uju's hands stilled, her breath catching. Show you what, my queen? What it feels like, Ugoma whispered, turning to face her fully. Her eyes searched Uju's, pleading. What it feels like to be touched. Uju's eyes widened, her lips parting in shock. Your Highness, she began, her voice shaking. We can't. Shh, Ugomma interrupted, her fingers brushing against Uju's lips. It's just us. No one will come for the next 20 minutes. My queen, this is forbidden, Uju said, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotions. And yet, here we are, Ugoma whispered, leaning closer, her gaze locked on Uju's trembling lips. The space between them disappeared as Ugoma closed the gap, her lips brushing softly against Uju's. The kiss was tentative, filled with uncertainty, but laced with an undeniable longing. Uju's hands trembled as they found their way to Ugoma's shoulders, her touch hesitant yet impossibly tender. The kiss deepened, the world outside falling away. Ugoma's heart raced as she felt a warmth she hadn't known she was missing. But then, suddenly, Ugoma jolted awake, her chest heaving. She blinked, disoriented, as the soft, unchanging light of limbo came into focus. Her hand flew to her lips, trembling as the phantom sensation of the kiss lingered. It felt so real, she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks as the ache in her chest grew unbearable. She looked around the empty space, her heart sinking with the weight of reality. Uju was nowhere to be seen, and the dream had felt so vivid, so alive. The moon hung low over the stream, its light casting an eerie glow on the water's surface. Ugoma's heart pounded as she waded deeper into the icy current, her hand clutching Uju's like a lifeline. The others followed close behind. Uju's mother, calm but alert, and Ike, his broad shoulders, cutting through the water with ease. Keep moving, Uju's mother said, her voice barely above a whisper. The stream knows we are here. The stream? Ugoma echoed, her voice trembling. Quiet, Uju warned, tightening her grip. The water listens. The group pressed forward, the stream's gentle flow growing stronger with every step. The stars above them seemed to fade, swallowed by a thick, unnatural mist that clung to the air. The world grew darker, quieter, until only the sound of their splashes and heavy breaths remained. As they swam further, the water grew darker, its once clear surface now swelling with faint shifting shadows. Ugoma shuddered as something cold brushed against her leg. She froze mid stroke, panic rising in her chest. Something touched me, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Uju's eyes darted toward the water, her face tense. Don't look down, just keep swimming. Ugoma's breath quickened as she forced herself forward, her strokes clumsy but determined. But the shadows grew bolder, darting closer, their movements predatory. A sudden splash broke the silence, and Ike let out a sharp curse. What was that? He growled, gripping his leg. Don't stop, Uju's mother commanded, her voice sharp. If you falter, they will know we are weak. The water around Ike churned violently as something massive surged beneath him. Before he could react, a sleek scaled creature broke the surface, a monstrous eel like being with glinting eyes and a mouth full of needle sharp teeth. It lunged at Ike, its jaws closing around his scarf. Ike roared in pain, his fists slamming into the creature's head. Blood gushed into the water, turning it a dark crimson that spread like smoke. The creature hissed, releasing him before disappearing beneath the surface. Ike! Ugoma cried, her voice filled with terror. I'm fine, Ike grunted, though his leg trembled beneath him. Keep moving. But it was too late. The blood in the water had stirred the depths. The shadows beneath the surface multiplied, their forms growing larger and more defined. A deep resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through the water and their very bones. They are coming, Uju whispered, her voice trembling. The first creature broke the surface, a towering fish like monster with translucent skin that revealed its pulsing, glowing organs. Its eyes were dark, soulless pits, and its fins sliced through the water like knives. Behind it came others, smaller but no less terrifying. They moved with impossible speed, their movements synchronized as they closed in on the group. Swim! Uju's mother shouted, her voice cutting through the rising chaos. Do not look back. As they swam, another sound joined the hum, a haunting melody that seemed to rise from the water itself. The song was soft, hypnotic, pulling at their minds like a gentle tide. Ugomma felt her limbs grow heavy, her strokes slowing as the melody wrapped around her like a warm embrace. It's beautiful, she murmured, her eyes glazing over. Ugomma, no! Uju shouted, grabbing her shoulders and shaking her. Don't listen! The melody grew louder, more insistent, as ethereal forms began to rise from the water. The sirens were hauntingly beautiful, their luminous bodies shimmering like moonlight on the waves. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their mouths, though smiling, revealed rows of jagged teeth. Join us, one of them cooed, her voice like honey. She reached out a delicate hand towards Ugomma. Uju slapped the hand away, her jaw tight. She's not yours. The siren hissed, her serene mask slipping to reveal a feral snarl. The other sirens surged forward, their melodic voices twisting into shrieks. The group swam furiously, the water creatures snapping at their heels. Ike, despite his injury, held the rear, using his strength to push the others forward. One of the smaller creatures lunged at Uju, its jaws closing around her arm. She cried out, but before Ugomma could react, Uju's mother was there, striking the creature with a staff she had hidden beneath her robes. The creature recoiled, releasing Uju and sinking back into the depths. Are you all right? Ugomma asked, her voice shaking as she reached for Uju. I'm fine, Uju said, though her face was pale. Keep going. The gate to the afterlife loomed ahead, its light piercing through the darkness. The water grew colder as they swam closer to the chasm, a massive yawning divide in the depths. It seemed alive, pulsing faintly with an eerie glow that illuminated the dark water. The currents around it were fierce, swirling in unnatural patterns that pulled at their bodies with every stroke. We are almost there, Uju's mother said, her voice steady but strained. Ike swam silently beside her, his injured leg leaving faint streaks of blood that vanished into the churning water. Ugoma struggled to keep up, her limbs heavy with exhaustion. Is that it? She gasped, pointing toward the glowing abyss. Yes, Uju replied, her voice unusually quiet. Her grip on Ugoma's arm tightened as she slowed her strokes until they stopped just short of the chasm's edge. Ugoma turned to her, confused. Why are we stopping? I I can't go any further, Uju said softly, avoiding Ugoma's gaze. What do you mean? Ugoma asked, panic creeping into her voice. You've been with me this whole time. You can't leave me now. Uju's chest rose and fell as she took a shaky breath. I can't enter the afterlife. The words hung heavily in the air, the weight of them pressing down on Ugoma. What are you saying? Why not? Uju finally looked at her, her eyes filled with sorrow. Because I've stolen from the afterlife before. And once you steal from it, you can never enter again. Ugoma's heart sank. Stolen? She repeated, her voice trembling. What did you take? Uju's lips pressed into a thin line. A chance. A chance to escape limbo. I used it to return to the living, to be with someone I cared about deeply. She paused, her voice faltering. That was centuries ago, but the afterlife doesn't forgive. Ugoma stared at her, trying to process the revelation. So, you can't come with me? Then who will? Uju glanced toward her mother and Ike, who stood at the edge of the chasm, their faces somber. They'll go with you. What? Ugoma said, shaking her head. No, that doesn't make sense. Why can't you go? Why then? Uju hesitated before speaking. Because they are not from the limbo world, Ugoma. They are from the afterlife. Ugoma's breath caught in her throat. What? She whispered, her eyes darting between Uju's mother and Ike. You are saying they don't belong here? Uju nodded. They've been with me for centuries, but their time in this realm is running out. They've already used up their three chances to visit the worlds. This will be their last. Ugoma's legs felt weak as the water swelled around her. And you didn't tell me this, she said, her voice breaking. Why? If I had known, I would never have involved them in this. Uju stepped closer, her expression filled with quiet anguish. Because I saw the desperation in your eyes. I saw how much you needed to go back to your mother, and time was running out. Far above the chasm, in the mortal world, a group of villagers dragged Ugoma's lifeless body from the river, their voices filled with urgency. Her mother knelt beside her, wailing, her hands clutching at her daughter's cold, limp form. Mwam, come back to me. Mwam, no, she cried, her voice raw with grief. A man knelt beside her, his voice grim. She's almost gone. We need to take her to the Ezemo. Maybe the priest can perform the rituals to bring her back. The scene faded as the sounds of the villagers' frantic movements echoed into the water. You can hear it, can't you? Uju said, her voice soft but firm. Time is running out. Ugoma nodded, tears blurring her vision. What do I do? You go into the afterlife with my mother and Ike. Uju said, her tone decisive. They will help you retrieve the moon. But listen to me carefully. Once you've stolen it, you can never return to the afterlife. The moon is sacred. Taking it means you close this door forever. Ugoma's heart pounded. What happens to your mother and Ike? They'll stay behind, Uju said, her voice steady despite the pain flickering in her eyes. Once they've helped you out, their journey here will end. They've been with me long enough. It's time I let them go. No, Ugoma cried, shaking her head. This isn't right. I can't ask them to do this. Uju placed a hand on Ugoma's cheek, her touch gentle. It's not about asking, Ugoma. It's about what's right. Your heart lies with your mother in the world of the living. That's where you need to be. Ugoma swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. And where does your heart lie? Uju hesitated, her gaze dropping. It doesn't matter. This isn't about me. Uju pulled a small glistening leaf from her waist pouch. I'll place this between my lips. It will protect me from the spirits while I wait here for you. What do you mean, wait for me? Ugoma asked, her voice trembling. We will have 3 hours to return to Limbo and the mortal world, Uju explained. The moon's presence in the mortal world will align the three realms for exactly 1 minute. During that time, each realm will have 2 moons. That's your window to find your body at the Ezemo's shrine and return to life. Ugoma's chest tightened with doubt. This feels complicated. What if I fail? You won't, Uju said firmly, her hand gripping Ugoma's. You can do this, but you need to go now. Ugoma hesitated, her mind a whirlwind of fear and guilt. But Uju's steady gaze anchored her. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. All right, she said, I'll do it. Uju hugged her brother and mother, saying their final goodbyes. They turned toward the glowing chasm, its light casting long shadows over their faces. Behind them, Uju stood at the edge, the leaf pressed between her lips. She watched them disappear into the glowing depths, her heart heavy with both hope and heartbreak. The water lapped softly against the river bank as Ugoma and Uju sat side by side, both drenched and trembling from their outdoors journey. The moon Ugoma held glowed faintly, its lights illuminating their tired faces. The air was thick with silence, the weight of unspoken words pressing between them. Uju broke the silence, her voice calm but laced with a quiet sadness. We have to start swimming again to the mortal world. There is no time to waste. Ugoma hesitated, her gaze fixed on the faint ripples in the water. You are coming with me? Yes, Uju replied, her tone steady. But as you know, I can't cross the chasm to the mortal world. Ugoma turned to her, her eyes searching. It's because you've already exhausted your chances to visit, isn't it? Uju nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. That's right. There was a long pause, the distant sound of the water spirits humming faintly in the air. Let's go, Uju said, brushing her hand against Ugoma's shoulder. We have a long swim ahead of us. As Uju waded into the water, Ugoma's voice cracked. Wait! Uju turned, her wet hair clinging to her face. What's the matter? I don't, Ugoma stammered, her voice trembling. I don't think I want to go on with this. Uju stepped closer, cupping Ugoma's cheek with her damp hand. Her touch was gentle, steadying. You need to go home, she said softly. Your mother needs you. Ugoma stared at her, her chest tightening as tears welled in her eyes. Without thinking, she threw her arms around Uju, burying her face against her shoulder. The closeness between them felt like both a comfort and a curse. Uju hesitated before wrapping her arms around Ugoma, her fingers pressing lightly against her back. They stood that way for a moment, the world around them forgotten. When they finally pulled apart, Uju smiled faintly. Let's go, she said, her voice low but resolute. We will swim together. The journey was grueling. The water grew colder with every stroke, the currents pulling harder as they drew closer to the chasm. Strange creatures swam alongside them, their glowing eyes watching but not attacking. Ugoma's arms burned with exhaustion, her breath coming in ragged gasps. At one point, a sudden swell of water dragged her under. She kicked frantically, her lungs burning, but Uju's hand found hers, pulling her back to the surface. Stay with me, Uju said, her voice firm but kind. Ugoma nodded, her grip tightening on Uju's hand. I won't let go. Finally, they reached the chasm, the faint light of the mortal world visible beyond its depths. Uju stopped, her expression unreadable as she turned to Ugomma. This is it, Uju said. I'll miss you. Ugomma's heart ached at the words. Wouldn't you be lonely staying here? She asked, her voice trembling. Especially now, without your mother or brother. Shh, Uju said, shaking her head. Let's not go over this again. You have 3 minutes left. You need to go. But Ugoma didn't move. Her eyes filled with tears as she touched Uju's cheeks. I can't leave you here, she whispered. I know who you are, Uju. I finally recognized you. Uju's heart skipped a beat. You do? Ugoma didn't reply. Instead, she leaned in, her lips brushing softly against Uju's. The kiss was gentle, hesitant, but filled with an unspoken depth that made Uju's breath catch. She pulled away, her voice breaking. You need to go home, Ugoma. But Ugoma shook her head. My home, she began, her voice trembling. My home is where my heart lies, Uju, and it lies here with you. Uju's eyes softened, her resolve crumbling as she leaned forward, capturing Ugoma's lips in a deep, passionate kiss. The glow of the moon surrounded them, its light intertwining with the currents around their bodies. The faint glow of the moon cast soft silvery shadows across the walls of the hut as their lips met in a kiss. The kiss was tender, cautious, but it deepened as the weight of their emotions overcame their doubts. Uju's hand slid to Ugomma's waist, pulling her closer. Uju pulled back for only a moment, her breath shaky. You want to let go of everything? She asked, her voice trembling as she searched Ugomma's eyes. Ugomma nodded, her gaze steady. Yes. Uju's lips found hers again, this time more urgently. The glow of the moon intensified, its light bathing them in warmth as the hut around them began to blur. The faint scent of burning incense and earth hung in the air. Their lips met again, the kiss more fervent now, filled with longing and a desperation that defied the rules of the world around them. Ugomma's hand slid to the nape of Uju's neck, pulling her closer. I want all the way, Ugomma whispered against Uju's lips, her voice trembling with both fear and desire. Are you sure, my queen? Uju murmured, her lips barely brushing Ugomma's. Her hand rested on Ugomma's thighs, hesitant but steady. Their lips met again, the world around them fading into the intensity of the moment, until a loud gasp shattered the air. They froze, their heads snapping toward the window. A palace guard stood outside, his face twisted with horror and disbelief. Abomination! He bellowed, his voice echoing into the night. Panic surged through them. Ugoma leapt to her feet, but before she could move, the door burst open. Guards stormed into the room, their eyes blazing with rage. Take them, one of them barked. Two guards seized Uju, dragging her back despite her struggles. Another grabbed Ugoma, their grip like iron. Let her go, Ugoma screamed, her voice raw with desperation. She's done nothing wrong. But her cries were ignored. The guards hauled them both through the palace corridors and into the rain drenched courtyard, where an angry mob had already gathered. The king stood at the center of the chaos, his royal robes soaked but his expression as cold as stone. Goma and Uju were forced to their knees in the mud, their hands bound. The mob's shouts filled the air, their torches casting flickering shadows in the wet ground. You, the king spat, his voice filled with venom as he glared at Ugomma. You disgrace this palace, this kingdom, and me. Ugomma lifted her chin, her defiance shining even through her fear. I love her, she said, her voice steady despite the quiver in her lips, and I don't regret it. The mob gasped, their murmurs growing louder. The king's eyes darkened, his fury palpable. Burn them, he said coldly, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Let their shame serve as a warning. Rain poured relentlessly as Ugoma and Uju ran through the forest, their breaths ragged and their hands clasped tightly together. The shouts of the mob echoed behind them, their torches bobbing like vengeful stars in the storm. Keep going, Uju urged, her voice barely audible over the downpour. I can't, Ugoma gasped, stumbling as her soaked robes tangled around her legs. Yes, you can, Uju said firmly, grabbing her arm and pulling her forward. They reached the river bank where a small rickety boat bobbed in the churning water. Get in, Uju cried, shoving Ugoma toward the boat. Go north and keep going until you see smoke and light. No, Ugoma sobbed, grabbing Uju's arms. Let's go together. We can't, Uju said, her voice breaking. The boat won't hold both of us, and you know you can't swim, my queen. Just go, I'll follow you. Promise me, Ugoma whispered, tears streaming down her face. Promise you'll come back. Uju cupped her face, her eyes filled with both determination and heartbreak. Even death can't stop me from coming back to you. With one final push, Uju guided the boat into the river, her heart breaking as Ugoma disappeared into the stormy night. She stood on the shore, the cries of the mob growing louder behind her, but her eyes never left the boat as it vanished into the darkness.